just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up, babe. Tonight we gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up now.
Hey guys, hopefully you can hear me okay. I had some technical difficulties tonight, and so we got a little different setup if you can't tell behind me, and you take for granted at home when I'm in my home studio some of the things that I normally have. So good to see everybody. Hopefully the camera's coming in okay. This is actually the camera on my laptop. I was trying to use the camera that I normally use from home. I brought it with me. I brought everything with me, but apparently the one thing I didn't bring is the right cable. So you would think all of these same, I think they're called micro USB or mini USB, whatever they are. You would think they would all work the same, but apparently some are only for charging and some are used for cameras and things like that. And so I think that's the issue I have tonight. And so finally, after fighting it for about 15 minutes, I decided to just hop over and just use the camera on the laptop. I think it looks okay, but the other thing that's different tonight is my microphone. So please let me know if there's an issue with the microphone blowing out the sound bar. Got it. Gary says, blowing out my sound bar. Hold on one second, Gary. All right, let me know, did that help any? Gary, let me know if that sounds any better. Did that help at all? What I just did there. Does this sound any better? Or am I still extremely loud? I'll just wait. Or anybody else. How am I sounding? Carl says better. Okay. All right. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, like I say, this is not my normal setup. As most of you know that join me every week, this is not my normal background. I'm actually in a hotel room in Houston. I'm going to be on Daikin's Accelerated HVAC Success podcast. And let me show you guys, for those of you that have not seen it, I've shared it with you guys a couple times, but Accelerated HVAC Success podcast. So this is kind of what that looks like. And they have guests on that, you know, look at their setup. That's a really cool microphone they have too. So anyway, I'm excited to get on there. I'm going to actually talk about some of the things we do here on the YouTube channel. And, you know, that's going to be a lot of fun. And they had me down to Houston to be on it. So it's an honor. And so that's where I'm at. That's why the background doesn't look like it normally does and all that good stuff. So I wanted to start out tonight's show with an interesting story, a heartbreaking story out of Las Vegas. And this story's from earlier this year. And it says, an 82-year-old Henderson woman died waiting for an air conditioning repair. Survivors of an 82-year-old woman who died while waiting for her air conditioner to be fixed, have filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the company that sold her a home warranty policy. So this is another one of those home warranty mishaps, and home warranties are, if you've seen any of my videos before, you know I'm not the biggest fan of them, at least from the contractor standpoint. And it looks like the family of this poor lady is blaming the home warranty company. It says Virginia DeSapio, hopefully I'm not saying her name too, I'm sure it's probably not pronounced right, but was found dead on August 22nd in her Henderson home near Valle Verde Drive and Paseo Verde Parkway. When the coroner arrived, it was 120 degrees inside the home, according to a lawsuit filed Thursday in Clark County District Court. And so I guess this was last August, so not this past month, because this article's from earlier this year. The lawsuit names Fidelity National Home Warranty Company, and honestly, I have not heard of that company, but that's not unheard of. There's a lot of different home warranty companies that use different names. So, you know, maybe this is one of the usual suspects under a different name, or maybe this is just someone I've never heard of. I'm not sure. 6 damages for causes including negligence, breach of contract, and wrongful death. Surviving nephews Gregory, Kelly, Troy, Gregory are plaintiffs in the lawsuit, along with the state co-special administrator Janice Gonzalez. They are represented, blah, blah, blah. Her death certificate states her cause of death as, quote, environmental heat stress, unquote, caused by, quote, prolonged exposure to elevated ambient temperatures, unquote. The death certificate also indicates she had lung cancer. So heartbreaking. It sounds like her air conditioner was not working. And what a lot of folks don't realize, and I'm not going to go this whole show, we could do a whole show just on home warranty companies. In fact, I've done whole videos on home warranty companies. But I will say that, you know, when there's a home warranty company involved, so if you have paid for a home warranty, for your home, and you are expecting it to be paid for by them, unfortunately, and I'm not saying that's what happened here, but I'm guessing that it could be, and that is the home warranty company is in control at that point. And so they can tell the contractor how long it's going to take to approve it. They can take a long time to approve it. They can say, oh, we're going to push. I remember one of the things that when we used to do them years ago, they would always say, oh, we're going to send this up to our R&D department to look it over before we make an approval or tell you where we're going to go from here. And so the point is, that this poor lady was waiting for whatever reason for her air conditioner to be fixed. One of the things, now we're not in Vegas, so the temperatures are very extreme in comparison from where I live to Las Vegas. But one of the things that we do in our area is if someone is elderly, if someone has an infant in the home, if someone is, honestly, if they're on our VIP club at Griffin Air, we will give them a portable air conditioner to get them through it, even if it's just one in their bedroom so they can sleep at night. And so I wonder, from what I'm reading so far, if that alone, if the home warranty company or the contractor had provided that, maybe this poor lady, her life would have been saved. The lawsuit describes an ordeal that began on August 11th when DeSapio's air conditioner stopped working. She notified the home warranty company. Nevada law includes an air conditioning failure as a problem requiring an emergency fix, but the lawsuit alleges a response that took much longer than required and a completion date that was 14 days after Virginia DeSapio was found dead. Repeated communications with Fidelity show that even the first communication stating it would take longer than 3 days to make repairs came after 5 days had already passed. In all, the lawsuit alleges Fidelity sent 5 statements saying the repairs would take longer than 3-day requirement, starting on August 16th and ending on September 1st. The company's reason? Technician researching price to begin with and parts on order. starting on September 1st, the lawsuit states. So I will say that and I'm not in the game of defending home warranty companies, but if in their defense, if a part had to be ordered, that would not be their fault. But that's when you have other solutions, like I was talking about with the portables. DeSabio's home warranty policy cost her $635 per year. It covered heating, air conditioning, evaporative coolers, and ductwork, the lawsuit said. The lawsuit seeks general and special damages, punitive damages, nominal and liquidated damages, blah, blah, blah. So, and attorney's fees. So, very heartbreaking story. Again, I don't know that we know the whole story. We don't know, all sides of it. But in reality, we've got someone here that waited longer than they should have for some sort of relief, and unfortunately paid dearly for that. So, very heartbreaking story. I want to start. I don't know that I wanted to start tonight out with a sad story, but I just thought it was a very interesting HVAC story. I know some of you know that, I'll sometimes start our shows out with some news across the country of heating and air related matters. So, very sad, very sad. Let's see. So let's go back to our chat here. Hey, Gary, Carl, NYC, Gil, Mark, Aaron, hopefully I'm saying your name correctly. Depending on where you're from, maybe that's pronounced Aaron. Maybe that's better. I don't know. But I'll call you Aaron for now until I know. Gary says, you must enjoy that steak dinner slowly. Actually, I had Mexican tonight. Being down here in Texas, they've got some great Mexican food. So that's what I had tonight. Let's see. Boop, boop, boo. Emery says, it sounds good. Good. Gail Ann, good to see you. Bruce, BTL, any thoughts on Bosch heat pumps? So, BTL, I don't know if you're the guy that I'm helping on our website, New HVAC Guide. If you guys look way over there in the corner, that's our company where we help people through the process of buying an HVAC system and give advice. And we have a step-by-step process that we will give them on hopefully not having some of the problems that a lot of homeowners have when purchasing heating and air systems. And I'm helping someone on there too, and we're talking a lot about Bosch. So any thoughts on Bosch? My thoughts haven't changed a whole lot except for a couple things. The one thing that I used to talk about Bosch with is it was a very budget-friendly inverter option that homeowners could purchase and get an inverter. Now, it wasn't a communicating inverter system, but it was still more superior to a single-stage system was kind of the point. And at the time, when they first came out, the 1.0s, you could get them for around, not much more, or around the same price as a single-stage system for a lot of other brands. So that's what originally drew me to them. And because of lots of different reasons that we're not going to talk about in this show, the price of their equipment is not as budget-friendly as it once was. Now, does that mean that the quality went down, or does that mean I hate them? No, it's just that one thing that they had is not there anymore. And the other thing that I'll just mention about them is they did have a small problem. And I say small, there's been multiple manufacturers that seem to have a problem in the supply chain. Even still today, here we are years after the pandemic, depending on how you look at it. I know some folks are saying it's still here or coming back, but from the original pandemic, when the world fell apart and everyone was having supply chain issues, Bosch seemed to be one of those as well. And it continued for a while, and I got aggravated a couple times, but I think that seems to be at least alleviated a little as well. So other than that, I think they're fine. They're, they are what they are. They're a non-communicating inverter system. They need to be installed properly so you don't have humidity issues and some of the other issues that folks have. And the last thing I'll say is they have probably the most efficient residential package unit on the market right now. Until some of these other brands make one or care enough, maybe it's not enough of their market share for them to care yet. But Bosch was probably the first to the table on that, and you will probably see in the future more folks coming out with something similar. So that's my overall thoughts on Bosch heat pumps. Kendall says, "Hey Joshy," for those of you that don't know, Miss Kendall is Mrs. Griffin Air. So I told her to jump on. I was getting on my live show. John says, "Josh, where do you like two thermostats?" I think he's asking, where do you like to put them, maybe? Most occupied, most windows. So where, I think, John, I think you're asking, where do I want to put the thermostat? Is that, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's what you're going for here. And my answer is, we all know every house is different, so there's going to be houses that, I might break this rule, but for the most part, most homes, I'm going to put that thermostat in, well, there's a couple rules of thumb here, right? So I want it as close to a return, maybe the biggest return if possible, right? But close to a return if possible. I'll tell you, in my house, it's not close to a return, and that's okay. But just in general, I'd like it to be close to a return if possible. Okay, so that's the first one. The next one is, I wouldn't want it to be in a location that it could be affected by something else in the home. So an example of that might be if there's a fireplace. I don't want it near that fireplace. I probably wouldn't even put it in the same room, if possible. I wouldn't put it beside the front door, right? Full transparency, in my house, I didn't install my system. I'm just, so I don't even know why I'm telling you. But in my house, the thermostat is right beside the front door. And it's probably not a good idea, right? So every time that front door opens and closes, it's going to affect that thermostat, which can affect, the overall performance. That system might kick on because the door opened and not actually necessarily need to come on yet, kind of deal. I wouldn't put it in a kitchen, because cooking, you might be cooking one day and that could affect it. And then I guess the last rule of thumb that I would probably stick to is I would probably try to put it as close to the middle of the floor plan as possible, depending on where returns are, depending on sunlight coming in windows and the kitchen and all these other variables, right? And then once I consider all of those variables, and now I've got this, what's left over, I'm going to put it as close to the middle of whatever that is left over as possible. And so for a lot of homes, you guys know, and it's probably this way maybe in a home you've lived in, and that is, in a lot of homes, they will put the thermostat in the hallway going to, say, some bedrooms. So they've gotten it away from the kitchen, they've gotten it away from that front door, and so for a lot of homes, that means it will be in a hallway in the middle of what's left over. And in a lot of those hallways, the return might be located in that hallway somewhere too. So that's my overall spiel. I probably missed something because you asked me that question and I was just kind of coming off, just thoughts. I hadn't really sat down and thought about it, but that would be kind of the gist of it, especially if you're looking at moving it or installing it in a location for the first time ever. But John also says Bosch is great if you live in a cold, dry climate or warm, dry climate. If you have to deal with humidity, forget it. This is by design, not hating on Bosch. Yeah, the humidity is their weakest link, and that is where the non-communicating inverter systems, just like you said, by design, they're not going to perform quite as well as a communicating inverter system and on that front. Sean says, just swapped a single stage AC at our cabin with a Bosch IDS2. So far, so good. Where's that located, Sean? Where is your cabin? Because I would assume if you say cabin, there's probably a lot of wood there and humidity, depending on where you are in the country. You don't want a lot of humidity certain times of the year. So love to, if you wouldn't mind sharing, where is that cabin located? You know, because, excuse me, if it's in a humid location, you know, that's something that everyone has to consider at the end of the day, right? Emery says, hey Josh, met a guy who works as a design engineer for Trane in Tyler, Texas, and he designs residential AC systems. Very cool, very cool. I have been to the plant there in Tyler, and it was a lot of fun. If they ever decide they want to have me back, maybe I can bring a camera with me. We'll see. Hello, which do you prefer, Carrier or Trane? Christopher says. Well, Christopher, if you've seen any of my videos before, my answer to that question is I would probably care more about the contractor than the brand, especially looking at two of the more acceptable brands, if you will. If you were to throw out, you know, Carrier and then fill in blank, some brand that I would just tell you right off the bat, don't do that one. And of course, the question always becomes, well, what's that brand, Josh? I don't have one. There's like 100. But if you said, if you're saying just those two of the big three, right? The big three are Daikin, which makes Amana and Goodman, Carrier, which makes Bryant and all the ICP brands, and then Trane, which makes American Standard and a few other brands. And so those are the big three, and you've named two of them. And so because of that, I would say let's look at the contractor more than the brand. Now, if it's the same contractor offering both brands, my response to that is, why are they offering both brands? Wouldn't you want to go with a contractor that's drinking the Kool-Aid for one or the other? That they'll say to you, hey, I've tried both. I've tried multiple brands, and this is the brand. This is the one you got to go with, and here's why. That's the company I would want to do business with. They love what they're about to install in my home, right? So just a few things to consider there. And then I guess the last thing I'll say to your question is, which one between the two do I personally prefer? If I had to sell one or the other, it'd probably, I don't know if I'm going to answer that question. I think if you guys saw my show last week, you know which one of those two I am not very happy with right now because they think their parts are made of gold. Sam says, what is the importance of inverter with communicating versus non-communicating? It's not about the importance of the inverter. It's more about the importance of the technology behind communicating versus non-communicating. And I don't think it's come out yet, or maybe it has, but we talk a little bit about this exact subject. And so non-communicating, just to make it, well, let me back up. Let me just give you a real quick 10-second commercial. Inverter systems by default are like a dimmer switch on a light. There's a lot of in between. There's, where a normal light might be on or off, no in between. An inverter system is going to have a lot of in between. It's going to be like a dimmer switch, and it's going to ramp up and ramp down for multiple different reasons. Non-communicating systems, because they're non-communicating, meaning they use a 24-volt thermostat, they are, just because of that technology, the thermostats are just like what we've been used to for 50 years. They're just literally a set of switches inside of a digital display or a mechanical display years ago, right? But they're just switches, and a series of switches that'll close based on what you set it at and what temperature you set it at. And because those switches close, they send voltage, and it tells the system, hey, it's hot in here, and the system turns on. What controls the inverter side of that is, now I think a couple brands do it different ways, but ultimately it's looking at the coil or the suction pressure, the temperature of that, evaporator coil. In reality, it's looking at the pressure, really. and it will ramp up and down based on that. A communicating system, in contrast to that, instead of having a series of switches in the thermostat, your indoor unit, your outdoor unit, they're constantly sending data to one another using DC voltage and stuff, honestly, that I'm not, I'm sure there's some binary codes and all kinds of crazy stuff that I would never even be able to explain, much less comprehend, right? But they're sending data just like the internet to one another, and they're talking to one another, and they're saying, hey, it's not that hot out here, or hey, it's really humid in here, or hey, this is happening, or hey, whatever. And because of that, the system can operate as efficiently or as optimally or as quietly or as, we could just keep going, as the point being, performance, removing humidity, reaching temperature, all those things, but drawing as little amount of electricity as possible. And so it's just two different technologies. Both have the ability to ramp up and down, but because of the technology, you hear guys making YouTube videos. I saw one this week where the guy was talking about one of these non-communicating inverter systems. And don't get me wrong, they have their place. I put one in my house years ago when they first came out. They have their place. But he was almost trying to pretend that they're the best or they're better. And they're just simply not. They're a good budget-friendly option, but they're not as good, okay? So we did a video recently where we talked about comparing 3 different ratings or ways of breaking systems down when you're comparing them, instead of comparing SEER and all the other ratings that they compare on systems. Check out that video if you haven't seen it. It's called, bear with me. Boop, boop, boop. Hold on. My computer is going slow. Bear with me. Come on, computer. There it goes. It's called 3 HVAC efficiency types. 3 HVAC efficiency types. And I'll put a link to that in our chat here. Okay. Back to our chat. Roberto says, and Roberto, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that I've ever seen you on our show before. So welcome to our show. Would you know how to get in the service side cleaning PTAC units in a hotel, motels, California? Would you know how to get in the service side? Would you know how to get in the service side? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, Roberto. If you're asking how to service the units, instead of going outside or inside or any of that, most PTAC units, you take a few screws out and you slide it out like you would a window unit. So I'm not sure if that's what you're asking. Let me know if I'm not. Ryan always asks the tough questions. Ryan. He says, for new system installs, what size media filter do you normally install? 1, 2, 4, 5 inch or some other size? And why do you choose that size? Well, Ryan, it kind of depends. We try to be mindful of the static pressures, and we try to be, use that as part of this as well. But we usually, it just depends. So I would say in general, most installs, we're going to just do a normal filter grill, and they're going to have a 1-inch filter, and I'll usually try to talk them into using pleated over fiberglass, and that might be the end of it. But if we do offer some sort of an upgrade, then we usually will install those 4-inch media filters that have the I don't know what the word is, the ruffles or whatever, where you could cut the ends off and stretch it out. It's got a lot of surface area, and so because of that, it's less static than if you were to have less surface area, right? If it started to get dirty. MAMR says, are you sponsored by Daikin? So Daikin has sponsored some of our stuff, but years before that, I was selling Daikin, and so they don't sponsor our channel. They don't own our channel, although some of you probably think they do, but they don't. So I always say, and this is true, that if tomorrow, if who I think is best changes, then I'm not, they don't own me, I just personally right now think they're the best at a lot of things, John says, why do you want to locate thermostats near a return? Ultimately, because of control and optimum comfort. So if I want, and I think in the industry as a whole, that's a general rule for guys. They'll say, and a lot of times, try to keep it near the return. In contrast, if you were to say put it closer to a supply vent, then the air blowing on that thermostat or near that thermostat could affect the overall performance of the system. So the idea is, if you've got it closer to the return versus a supply, then you're going to be able to have an overall picture of the comfort. One thing that does drive me nuts, though, is you see these people, they'll have an issue, a ductwork issue, for example. So they'll have one room that's hotter than the rest. The rest of them get real cold. That one stays hot. And it's probably it could be a ductwork issue. It could be an issue with the home, right? If there's an insulation problem with that room or something else causing it to stay warmer than the others. But you'll see these guys, I don't mean this in an ugly way, but they just don't know what they're doing, and or at least in this particular scenario. I don't know everything, but I do know that relocating that thermostat to that room doesn't solve anything. Relocating the thermostat to a room that's hotter than the rest will just cause the system to run more, making the rest of the house get even colder for that room that's hot to reach temperature. And relocating the thermostat to that room does not actually fix anything. We're going to take a break from our chat and do a segment that I know some of you guys have grown to love. And this week's segment, bear with me because I'm not on my normal computer, it takes me a little longer. But this week's segment of Goofy Inventions. And so this week's segment of Goofy Inventions is we've seen thermostats come a long way, and we've seen them, now they can do geofencing, and they can do Wi-Fi, and they can do all these other things. They can do adaptive technology where they learn how long it takes to reach temperature, and then we're not even talking about all the communicating stuff and what it can do with alerts and stuff, right? So just in general, if you guys remember years ago, do y'all remember the TomTom GPSs? So they had of course, your GPS. It wasn't like in your phone like today. It was a whole nother part you would buy and connect it to your windshield. Maybe some of you guys still have one, I don't know, but the TomTom GPSs, and you could download different voices. And so this week's Goofy Invention is if you were to download a voices inside your thermostat. Maybe this is a thing already and I just don't know about it. Maybe one of the thermostat companies has this and I'm not aware of it. But I remember, with the TomTom, you could download different accents. You could have, you can have someone with an American accent. You could have someone with an Australian accent. I remember a friend of mine had downloaded the Austin Powers voice into his TomTom. And so this week's Goofy Invention is if you could download those different personalities or voices in your thermostat. We'll call them the TomTom thermostats. And the Austin Powers one, that one just always stuck with me because you would take a turn and it would go, yeah, baby, yeah. That's my Austin Powers for those of you that, I know you're impressed. But I just think it would be cool if you were changing the temperature and it was like, yeah, baby, yeah, So that's this week's goofy invention. Let me know what you think of that invention down in the chat. Let's see. Let's try to find where I left off at in our chat. Bear with me. Emery says, how far should a thermostat be away from a return vent? Wouldn't putting it near a return cause it to turn off prematurely? No, I would say it's probably the other way around. I would say putting it near a supply vent is what's going to make it act, sporadically. Yeah, Buddy, love the name, says, are HVAC manufacturer warranties generally transferable to a new owner if you sell the house? I would say, to answer, you said generally. I would say generally in most locations of the country, and the reason I say most locations of the country is there are states that have passed laws, Texas being one of them recently, where they have said, those have to be transferable to the next homeowner. And I think more states are going to be passing laws like that soon. But currently, generally, because you said generally, generally, the answer is no. I would say a lot of the brands and states do not currently require that or offer that. And then the ones that do, some of them will offer it, but then they'll offer it at a fee. So I remember selling another brand years ago, and they would let you transfer it, but then you had to pay like $99 to transfer it to the next homeowner. So right or wrong, I think we could probably say that in general, it would be nice if they always transferred, right? But they don't in all cases right now. Let's see. Sean says mountains of the Pacific Northwest, dry climate. Got it. Yeah, so you don't have to worry about humidity as much. Nice. I thought isn't the Pacific Northwest, you must be maybe in a more drier area, but usually there's parts of Oregon and Washington in general, and for the most part, and then up into Canada where it's cold, but it's not dry. So maybe you're closer to the Rocky Mountains or something up that way. But it'll be cold, but it'll be clammy. They still have to look at humidity and all that good stuff. MAMR says true, all depends on contractor. Sean says I actually need to add a humidifier and waiting to see how much the humidity increases this winter versus running the furnace. Interesting. Yeah, so you are definitely in a drier area if that's what you're looking at. Ryan says I recently visited family in Pennsylvania and many only have furnaces with no AC. Could they just add an indoor evaporator coil, an outdoor condenser to their existing system, or get a new full system that's fully matched? I would say in general, for the most part, they should be able to add something. I think for years that wasn't unheard of. Now, if you're trying to take advantage of certain rebates or this or that, then, you might have to do an entire system and make sure you're getting that cute little AHRI certificate. But if you have a furnace there and it's moving airflow just fine, you should be able to, just install a coil and either a straight AC or a heat pump and turn it into a dual fuel system. And maybe even save some gas if they've got propane. If they've got natural gas, they probably don't care. Don says, is Goodman a decent system? Watch my video on Goodman, Don. It's called Goodman, Good and Bad. Let's see, Goodman. I'll put a link to that. Let me find it here. In that video, I go through some of the reasons that Goodman may or may not have a reputation, good or bad. And I talk about some of the reasons why that might be. So definitely check out this video. I'm putting it in there right now. Let's see. Ryan says, if you have a communicating inverter system like the Fit, do people really need a separate dehumidifier, or does the communicating system handle humidity well enough? I think it depends on the situation. I think in general, they're going to remove more humidity versus a non-communicating inverter system by rule, typically. But to say does it remove enough, well, that just kind of depends on the house, right? You know, it depends on how tight the house is or the environment they live in. Some of them do need a little help. In fact, in my area, I would say a lot of them, I'm near the coast, and there are times of the year that they do need some help. And that, you know, even the best system on the market at removing humidity still might need a little help. They, you know, the main reason that they're so good at removing humidity isn't just because they work well or that they're inverters by rule of thumb, right? It's more of, and I think we all know this, it's because they're meant to run longer. You know, they're meant to ramp down and barely be running instead of that on off. And because they have longer run times, drawing less electricity, not more, then they, you know, because of that, they remove more humidity. Christopher says, I've watched your vids. I have a Carrier for 28 years, still working. Good for you, pal. You got your money's worth out of that. I did ask them for several of your questions, what to ask a contractor. I had last year a new circuit board and blower put in. Nice. Gary says, Josh, you have photos of my full split system right now in Massachusetts. It's 79 degrees at 80% humidity. Ooh, that's really high. I have just the single 15K BTU going. Right now here in Massachusetts. Oh, maybe you're talking about outside. It's 79 degrees and 80%. Or you're talking about inside. That's not good, pal. Gary says 75.5 in the home and 46%. Got it. Okay. Just contributing my current stats. T-stat in the long hallway with a smiley face. Sean says, have a Bryant communicating inverter in Seattle area. Can see real time how the system responds to humidity and other things, but it doesn't control humidity enough, in my opinion. It's more comfortable though. There are things that you can do, Sean, to also, not you necessarily, maybe your pro can do, maybe they can lower the airflow and that could help too. So if the system is set up to say run at 400 CFMs per ton, maybe they could lower that a little bit. Just depends. I'll be completely honest. I'm not as familiar with the Bryant Carrier communicating stuff. We've worked on it, but I don't claim to be as seasoned as, you know, possibly your local contractor with it. So they may know some other options too. If you raise that concern to them, you know, it may be a deal where you might see them make some tweaks and changes to really go after that humidity, but maybe you might see it run a little longer, or you might see it blow a little less, or whatever. Just throwing some ideas out there. Roberto says, how to get work cleaning them. How to get, first time on live, thanks. How to get work cleaning them. Roberto, I think you were the one asking about the PTAC, and if you're asking how to get work on cleaning them, you know, I'm not sure if that's what you're asking or not, but if it is, you know, maybe call some of your local hotels where they have a lot of those PTAC units. There are probably areas where they could keep you quite busy. Gil says, Roberta wants to know how to get into the service side of the air conditioning business, Josh. Oh, gotcha. Man, that's a loaded question. In fact, I did a video on this one time where I talked about some of the guys that we have applying for jobs with us, and the hope and dream was to try to help them or people trying to get into the trade on, you know, especially right now, most good companies are looking for good help, right? Especially during the busy times of the year. And they'll, you know, if you're willing to get in there and work and learn the trade and all that good stuff, they would probably love to have you. And so, yeah, Roberto confirmed. But I did a whole video, and I don't remember exactly what it's called off the top of my head right now, but I talk about in that video how to get your foot in the door in a few of these companies. And, you know, maybe if they're getting 30 resumes in a month, right? If they've got a job opening and, you know, let's say 28 of those 30 are guys that have zero experience, you need to look at how can you set yourself apart from those other 28 guys, right? So 2 of the 30, they may have experience, but maybe they are rough around the edges and the company doesn't hire them for one reason or another. Or maybe they've got something in their background check, or maybe they're, doing something dumb in their picture on social media. That's one of the things I talk about in that video too, is get that crap off of there. Get it off of your social media. It's not a good look, and nobody wants you working for them. No offense, you can disagree with me and then you still won't get hired. But, if you've got pictures of you partying or flying a Confederate flag or, doing something you shouldn't, illegal in your social media posts, companies might not want to hire you, no offense. And so, Roberto, I'm not saying you're one of those guys. You probably don't need to do that. But maybe the last thing I'll say is, of those 28 resumes, figure out a way to make yourself set up, set apart of those. Maybe go get your EPA license, CFC license. They're not hard to get. It's usually a quick little, class, or read a book and then you take a little test and you get your license to be able to handle refrigerant. That'll set yourself apart a little. And then, I think I say in that video, maybe on your resume, just put in big, bold letters, hey, I have no experience, but I'll be your best worker. I'll be here at work. I'll be the first guy here every day. I'll be the last one to leave every day. And if you are willing to teach me this trade, I will be your best guy you've ever hired. If you wrote that on a resume, I would hire you. I would at least get you in for an interview. And so, that's what it is. I'm not telling you to do that. Maybe that's unprofessional. What do I know? But just figure out a way to make yourself set apart from those guys. And getting back to your original question on cleaning PTAC units, watch a YouTube video. Find a YouTube video on the matter, figure out how to do it. Figure out how to do it well and do it right, and take a few pictures of yourself doing it, and then maybe show a hotel or something. I mean, there's ways to be creative with that, and I'm sure you'll get there, pal. Chris says, is there alternatives for an Aprilaire pleated filter? There's alternatives. Yeah, there's other brands. I think Honeywell makes one. I think a lot of the manufacturers like Lennox and Carrier, Daikin, all of them have their own, whether they make it themselves or relabel it, I'm not sure, but a lot of those brands have filters that are comparable or similar to the Aprilaire ones. Congree Cruiser, hopefully I'm saying that name correctly. I'll call you Mr. Cruiser. How about that? Mr. Cruiser says, thanks for your videos. I learned so much. I purchased a Daikin heat pump paired with a big efficiency furnace for the coldest Minnesota winter days, and I used a local Daikin Pro company. Nice. Keep us updated on how that goes, pal. And I'm actually going to send I've got a friend of mine at Daikin that I usually, when I see nice posts like this, I'll send it to him. So I just took a screenshot of your post. Let's see. Brian says you can do that in ways. Cookie Monster. Congress says big meaning of high efficiency furnaces that works with heat pump per my settings. Gary says I have an older Garmin and it has many of those voices. Gary, did you like my idea? Is this thermostat with personalities? Goofy invention, is this the next thing? Maybe we should patent that. Get our Garmin or TomTom thermostats, with personalities, where they talk to you. Another one might be instead of Austin Powers, but maybe just have some lady that that is seductive. Like you change the temperature. I did a YouTube short like that where she was like, "Ooh, you like that." Oh, you like it hot. So Brian says warranty transfer is happening now with a fee at $150 an area. Ryan says talking thermostats would get mired in my house. Maybe I'm not saying that right. But for accessibility, I know that would help for many people, and some people respond better to men or women's voices differently. Interesting. It's a good point. Congre says the 12-year parts and labor warranty was a huge reason I went with Daikin, plus your videos. Nice, pal. Good to hear. I hope you like it. Hopefully I didn't steer you wrong. And, you know, let us know. I mean, even if you do have an issue with it, keep us updated. Adrian, what's up, pal? You're probably not even here anymore. Adrian does a show on Tuesday nights as well. It usually starts right as mine is ending. Reliable HVACR, and his stuff is way more technical. He has guests on his show that, you know, they do a lot of commercial stuff, and they'll talk about a lot of HVAC stuff when it comes to that. So, but hey to Adrian. Ethan says, HVAC Guide for Homeowners, how you doing today? Hey, Ethan, I'm doing good down here in Houston. That's why my background's different. Sam says, follow-up question, how does a non-communicating inverter decide when to ramp up and down, and what controls that speed and capacity? For example, a light dimmer has a manual dial user control. Good question. I can't speak for all the brands, but I know at least some of them monitor the pressure. They got a pressure sensor that monitors that pressure coming back from the evaporator coil and decides if it needs to ramp up based on the target temperature programmed into that system. And so you can change that target temperature in some cases, and so it will, you know, ramp up and down based on that. So their argument to, on an extremely hot day, is the temperature coming back, it'll automatically ramp up, right? But we all know that that's not as it's just not the same technology as a communicating system. Christopher says, how is the system Guardian, is that, I think that, is that an ICP or is that a, no, that's made by, according to this, it's made by York. So I'm not a huge fan of York, but maybe that's just because we don't have a good supplier in our area. But I would say if you have a contractor that's talking to you about Guardian as a brand, I would go by how good the brand is versus, how good the contractor is. And if they, you know, if you've got a good contractor and they're willing to stand behind whatever they're installing, then, you know, then I would say go that route. Okay. Somebody says, Josh is cute, and that's why I'm here. As a bonus, I'm learning something about HVAC. You're cute too. Stacy says, recommended mini split for snow. Stacy, you want to look at some of the models that have low ambient. That's the verbiage you're looking for. Low ambient technology. And I think that it's great that you're looking ahead. You're trying to find a system that's going to work in a extremely cold environment, right? And so a lot of the brands, a lot of the big brands, they're going to tell you what temperature they work down to. Now realize if it says it works down to a specific temperature, that it does still lose capacity as it gets down to that temperature. And so that's why I get annoyed when we see some of these brands, they'll say, oh, well, we make a system that's this many SEER. And I'm like, yeah, but if you start looking at the performance charts, that, you know, it's not the best system, right? But you want to look for a system that's low ambient. I know Daikin has their Aurora, and then I think their new Atmosphera product goes, no, I could be wrong on that, the Atmosphera. Don't hold me to that. But Aurora does pretty well at extreme temperatures. I know Mitsubishi has their Hyperheat. And I think Fujitsu has I forget the verbiage they use, but it's got something similar to Mitsubishi's Hyperheat. So, you know, you want to be careful with some of the brands outside of those bigger brand names. And it's not all about the brand, right? But it's, you know, there are a lot of brands out there that it's just, companies that are making the same products, but they're just slapping different American words on those, products. And so find that, look for the low ambient capabilities, and hopefully, that'll help you. The last thing I'll say is get some quotes, talk to a few contractors and see what they recommend, or I would defer to your local contractor and their opinion. Carl says, usually a heat only furnace has a narrow throat that is restrictive, allow AC. That's a good point. I mean, that's something you always got to keep in mind. But I think Carl, you're talking about the original question where they were talking about adding AC. And I think in general, the answer to that original question is yes, though, right? If you've got a furnace there and it's moving air, you should be able to, in most cases, install that evaporator coil with an AC. Emery says, how does the condenser fan reject heat? Reject heat. Emery, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, unless you're talking about, when you say reject heat, are you asking like, how does it operate? Like, why does it have heat going out the top of that fan? And I think it's what you might be asking. And it's because air is being pulled across that coil inside that unit. Brian says hotel work is PTAC. Chris, your videos calls me to buy my new Daikin Fit system. Let me know how that goes for you, Chris. Hopefully good. But even if not, let us know. Miss R, welcome to the show. I don't think I've ever seen your name on here. How common is mold in metal air vents? Just moved, opened return to change the filter and found dry black mold dust on the inside of the frame, some slats in the vent in the south, concerned for deeper issues. I would, if nothing else, have a company run a camera. Just make sure that, they can see all the ducts and make sure everything's on the up and up on that. As far as how common is it, unfortunately, probably more common than it should be, but that doesn't mean that it's okay. So have a company run a camera, or if nothing, if at the very least, inspect your indoor, if it's a split system and there's an indoor unit, wherever that air handler or furnace area is, pop some covers off and let's get everything inspected real good. And be proactive with that if it is mold. And check out my video where I go over mold and ductwork. Ryan says, since you live on the coast, and deal with corrosion on coils, do you ever apply coatings or sprays to help protect the coils? Products like Gulf Coat or Coil Guard. Honestly, I never have. I know Daikin has the bluing, I forget the verbiage, but the protectant on their coils. And then some of the brands actually have all aluminum coils that are meant to, be protected from saltwater spray. But to be honest with you, I don't deal with it as much as you might think because I'm not on the ocean. I'm actually on the Rappahannock River mostly. Some of our customers are on the Chesapeake Bay, but it's just not something we see a lot of. I have my supplier supplies a lot of folks down in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and they deal with it a lot. I don't think there's a spray on this earth that can save some of those units. Like they just look like they look like they've been dipped in acid after, a handful of years. It's just nuts, the beating that some of those systems take. Brian says, don't say all that unless you commit. Gail says, Josh is correct on having a clean look to your social media when wanting to be hired and representing a company. Yeah, unfortunately it's true. People look at that, before they make their hires. I do. I've got a guy that's applied for Griffin Air. Maybe he'll see this and maybe he'll finally take it down. But he's applied with us at least, no joke, 10 times. And I would love to give him an opportunity, or I would have loved to give him an opportunity, but he'll never get one because he has the Confederate flag all over his social media. Now, this is not me saying if you're one of those people and you want to fight over whether it's right or wrong for him to be able to fly that flag, I'm not saying he doesn't have that right, but I also have the right to not consider hiring him because he's going to be in people's homes, you know? And I don't just look for that. I'm just saying in general, clean that stuff up, you know, make it private if nothing else. And it's just not a good look. It's not very, very professional. This is a professional trade. You're going in somebody's house and you're being paid money to do a professional trade. And you should act like a professional even from the very start, if that's something that, you know, if this is something you really want to do, or at least consider doing. Bob, sorry I'm late. No problem, Bob. Glad you're here, pal. Ethan says, I keep my air on 74 to 76. Woo! That's warm. We keep ours much lower than that. But lately it's been mostly on 74. Do you think that's a good temperature for the system? Yeah, I mean, I think that you're keeping it warmer than I do, and you're probably saving energy, and you're probably having less wear and tear on your system because of that. My wife has a good HVAC guy that'll repair her system if something goes wrong. So we keep it on, we keep our house all the way down on 70 to 71, depending on the day, you know, but usually 70. We keep it pretty cold in our house. And I'm a chubby guy, right? You know? So, wow, the comments are really rolling in, guys. We're going to be wrapping up here soon. Get your questions in. It's getting late, you know. It's not that late where I am today, but if I was at home, I'm in another whole time zone over, and I'm trying to be mindful of that. But it's getting a little late, so, you know, get your questions in there. Gary says, actually, it is a good idea, Josh. After all, my smoke and CO2 detector yells at me when I test her. That is hilarious. Let's see. I want to do, we used to end every show with shouting out good companies. Let's switch it up this week as we start to wrap up. I'm going to get through these last bit of questions, but I'd like to do as we're wrapping up, if you have something that you I don't know how I want to word this, a setting or a feature in your thermostat that you really like, or that you make sure is turned on at all times, comment in our chat. I'd like to just touch on that as we wrap up our show. If you've got a setting, I've got one that I'm going to share at the very end here. And if you've got a setting or a feature in your thermostat that you love about that thermostat, or you always make sure is in a thermostat before you purchase that thermostat, put that in the chat, and we will go over those as we wrap up our show tonight. Ryan says, I meant a talking thermostat would get muted in my house. That's hilarious. Annie, hello, welcome to the show. Ryan says, Fujitsu extra low temperature heating. Got it. XLTH, got it. So that's their low ambient. Ryan is sharing there. Yeah, Buddy says, are variable speed blowers sufficient enough to remove humidity when paired with a single stage system? It just depends on the house. You know, are they sufficient? They should be hopefully more sufficient than a regular single stage system with a single stage PSC or even ECM motor, but are they going to be sufficient? Well, that just depends. It depends on the house, depends on many other variables to know if that's going to be enough humidity removed from the house without a dehumidifier. Where I live, it's not, you know, it sounds like a lot of you folks asking questions, you're trying to get away from having a dehumidifier in your house. Where I live, it's not uncommon to have a dehumidifier in the house regardless of what system is there. It's just a matter of installing a system that you hope it removes more humidity versus less, right? Annie says, I get a lot of dust in the house. What's up with that? Well, Annie, first thing I would say is let's look at your, let's see, if it is something to your heating and air system, maybe have your ductwork inspected. They can even do a duct blast test in some extreme situations and find out if there is a problem with duct leakage that could be pulling dust from other parts of the house. But you can also install some filtration and things like that to remove some of that dust in the house and hopefully help with that. Tech Junkie said also get an air quality test done. That's true. Christopher says, for a Cape Cod house, 1.5 floors, is a single stage or 2-stage system good? I mean, if it's sized properly, I'm sure it's fine. You know, you just want to make sure everything is sized and installed properly. Bob says York used to make outdoor coils with a coating on coils exposed to salt water and similar environments. Yeah, I think a few of the brands, I know Carrier had their Coastal line. And Train and American Standard, of course, have the spine fin that's all aluminum. And then, you know, Daikin has their blued coating on a lot of their products. Emery says, what is the best HVAC trade school in your area? In my area, I haven't found one that I'm in love with yet. Now, I do know that our local community college, they got a new teacher this past year for their heating and air stuff. I have not met him. I've tried to reach out to our local school multiple times to set up a good relationship with them. I've even offered to donate equipment to them, and there's a little bit of a barrier there. I looked at it like if I could create a good relationship with them and maybe send stuff to them, maybe if they get a good kid in there and he's doing great and he's learning the trade, maybe they'll send him my way. And I don't know, maybe they've already got that with someone else, and maybe that's why I don't get a very warm reception from them when it comes to that stuff. But I tell you, I've been going through some of the online stuff, just, you know, kind of checking out some of the online schooling and courses that are out there. And there's obviously you can't do any hands-on stuff, but there's some really good stuff out there that you can, you know, consume online. Ethan says, that's cold. I never go below 73 in my house and have never went above 77. Yeah, we keep it cold, and we keep it cold in the summer and winter. So, you know, it's not one of those deals where we love consuming energy. And so, you know, because I've been in some people's houses that they don't want to consume energy. So in the summer, they keep their temperature really high. And then in the winter, they keep their temperature really low, and they're trying to save energy. Whereas with us, we keep it the same temperature year round. It's just colder than most. We keep it around 70 in the summer and then around 69 to 70 in the winter. So I'm a chubby guy. Annie says, what's considered a good filter? That's a loaded question, Annie, and we're going to be wrapping up our show. But I have done several videos on filters. Check out a few of those and, you know, go through, you know, it just depends on, there's a lot of variables to that. But I've done a few videos. I think if you just search my videos and then search filters, if you go to my channel and search the word filter, I've done multiple videos on different types of filters, electronic air filters, whole house home filters, and of course disposable and washable filters. Gary says, great show, Josh. Enjoy your continued Daikin education. Catch you next week. Thanks, Gary. Have a great week. Tech Junkie says, interesting fact, my house at 77 degrees at 50% humidity is very uncomfortable. I'm sure that is. That sounds really high to me. My grandma's house at the same conditions feel perfect. I wonder so if she's at the same humidity, because if the humidity is different, as you know, Tech Junkie, then that would affect your comfort. Same conditions feels perfect. That goes to show there's more going on in that building that's unknown. Very true. Larry, I would like a PIN number to lock out my wife. Larry, they make thermostats for that. They make thermostats where you can lock the screen, or we installed a dummy thermostat one time where, now it wasn't a spouse that did it. It was actually a college where they installed these thermostats where the college kids thought they had control of things in the common areas, and the school they were basically dummy thermostats. They didn't control anything. So Roberto says, my favorite setting is fan on turbo mode. Be careful with that if you live in a humid area. Annie says, how to clean outside unit. There's videos on that. I would, if you don't know what you're doing, I would get a pro though. It's usually not that expensive to have a pro just do it correctly. We're almost wrapped up here. Just going through the last few comments here. Seeing if I just don't want to miss anybody's questions or comments on our trade program. Will give you a grant for training the kids. I heard that the federal government is starting to look at taking care of a lot of schooling for folks, even at the local levels, and they understand that this is a big problem, and so they're starting to offer more and more free schooling. Ryan says, I like the feature on my Nest to preheat or cool earlier than the set time on my program schedule. This way in the morning temperature is what I want, since at night I sleep on a cooler setting. Yep, that's a good point. Different brands call it different things, but yeah, where it basically will, I think Nest, you call it a preheat or pre-cool. Some of them, I think Honeywell calls it adaptive intelligent recovery or something like that. But it's basically where the thermostat will learn your home, and if you have it set at, say, 6 a.m. to reach a certain temperature, it will learn, well, I actually need to turn on at 5:15 or 4:45 or whatever to reach that temperature. Ethan says that's exactly what my grandma does with her AC, 73 during the day and 71 or 70 at night. Larry says, great news, thermostats slack out. Larry, you are going to start wars, pal. Emery says, how is a vaulted ceiling affected by heat load calculation? It does affect it a lot. You need to keep that in mind. If you have vaulted ceilings, it can change your, your heat. That's why I get annoyed when people go by just square footage alone. Vaulted ceilings are a good reason, a good example of why just going by square footage would affect your heat load calculation dramatically. I told you guys that I would wrap up tonight's show with a setting on my particular thermostat that I really enjoy, that I use a lot, and I'll actually give you a couple of them. The first one is I really enjoy the, I have a Honeywell 8000, so it has the backup heat stage timer, and it also has the heat droop settings. And I like that because in the wintertime, I can tell that thermostat, hey, if it gets down to this temperature or that temperature, that's when you'll bring on the heat strips, but it'll have a timer, so it'll give that heat pump a chance to reach temperature before bringing on those heat strips. It'll save energy because of that. Another thing I like about that thermostat is I like the extended fan runtime. I'll turn that on. It gets the last little bit of energy sometimes out of that evaporator coil or heat strips. And, it's only 30 seconds, runs longer, but that's something that I'll sometimes turn on, or actually I'll leave it on all the time. So my system will reach temperature. You'll actually hear it click, and the outdoor unit will turn off, and then the indoor unit will continue to run for 30 seconds longer across that coil or heat strips. And that also is good for, other things like, dirty sock syndrome and things like that. So anyway, that's pretty much it, guys. I appreciate those of you that have stayed this late. This is pretty late for the East Coast, and I appreciate you guys. We're going to be back next week starting at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Find out what that time is in your area. Keep in mind, coming up in a couple weeks, we will not, I know tonight we were a late start, and in a couple weeks, we won't have a start at all. And I'll let you guys know as time gets closer. I think it's going to be the first week of October. We're definitely not going to do a show that week because I'll be out of the country. So anyway, thank you guys. I appreciate all your support. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, we're really trying to make a good push for 100,000 subscribers. So that way, I think that'll get us in a few doors that we're not currently being able to get behind, and we'll be able to, say, hey, we've got 100,000 audience members that would love to see what you could show us here, right? And so we've actually got one of those coming up that we're going to be kind of like we did at Daikin, where we're going to go behind closed doors on a few things. So excited about that. But if you haven't subscribed, please do. And thank you for all your support. We'll see you next week. Make it a great week. Take care.